All right, let's get into it with the two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and the 10-year vet Douzable. Guys, came down to the last swing once again. And in this one, the Ravens hang around. They're going in to take a 7-point lead, and instead you're chasing 7 for the rest of that fourth quarter. Deuce, obvious turning point in this game was that 98-yarder.
Yeah, definitely. It was the miscues that really hurt the Ravens today, right? The interception early on in the first quarter by Tyler Huntley led to 7 points by the Cincinnati Bengals. And then, Joe, you brought it up, right? You're on the inch-yard line. You have a 6'5" or 6'2", 250-pound back in Gus Edwards, who literally just got 2 yards the play before that. Now, Tyler Huntley tries to go up and across the goal line, but it was like a yard, almost yard and a half.
It's a big yard.
Yeah, so my thing is I just didn't understand the play call. I don't know what Greg Roman told him in his headset. Did he tell him to go over the ball, over the top and try to reach the ball across? Because he saw Trevor Lawrence maybe do that yesterday. You got to understand, Tyler Huntley, that's a long yard in the NFL. Those defensive linemen are submarining below, right? So they're going to start a pile. It's going to be a long route for you to get there. Turn around, hand it to your running back, or just regular sneak it right there and have your running back push you in. Right there, you see Mark Andrews is behind you. No need to go over the top. Let him push you into the end zone, which you probably would have got across. Costly miscue and turnover right there that led to another 7 points for the Bengals, and they survive in this game.
No question. You cannot turn the football over in the red zone. You definitely can't turn the football over on the 1-yard line. I agree with you, Lee J. Clearly, there was some miscommunication going on, because if you look at the guys behind Tyler, they were trying to push him just like what we see with Philly and Jalen Hurts. For some reason, he tried to go above the offensive lineman and reach the football nowhere close to the goal line. And that was a game-changing play. At that moment, the Baltimore Ravens had all the momentum. Offensively, they were generating some things, doing some positive things to get into the red area on the 1-yard line. You get points. You look at how their defense performed against Joe Burrow and his offense. They really had their number. So right there, you cannot afford to not take advantage of the moment to put points on the scoreboard. So instead of getting 7, you don't even get 3, but you give up 7. That was a huge game-changing play. I'm not saying that play alone was the reason why the Baltimore Ravens lost this ball game, but that played a big part.
It did come in the fourth quarter, and important to note that down in distance, they're 3rd and 1. So to BMAC's point, you're at least walking away with 3, or in true John Harbaugh fashion, you're lining it up on 4th down to try and go get it again. Instead, Snoop over the top. Snoop gives it away, 6 the other way, a 14-point swing in theory. You mentioned Joe Burrow in this situation. I think time of possession in the first half was very lopsided. The Ravens employing that game plan to keep Burrow off the field. Deuce, what did you make of the minutes that Burrow was on the field in this one? The numbers don't sing, but he comes away with the win.
Yeah, definitely in the first half, he was efficient with the football. When they went man coverage, nobody has a better rapport with his receiver, Jamar Chase. He knows where to go with the football as far as throwing those hitches and those back shoulder passes, and even some of those out routes. He picked them apart. This is what Joe Burrow has done all season, right? Dink and dunk all the way down the field. Be efficient with the football. Now, we saw the injuries for the offensive line start to pile up in that second half for the Cincinnati Bengals, and then the Ravens defensive line was able to get after Joe Burrow, and they kind of stalled out in that second half, right? So when your offense isn't playing to the level that they're used to playing to, right? We call it complementary football. You get 7 points from your defense, and that's exactly what happened a week ago, right? Trey Hendrickson ended up getting a sack fumble on Anthony Brown in the end zone to get 7 points in that game, too. So complementary football, when your offense isn't playing as well as it can, you need your defense to pick you up, and that's what the Bengals did today.
I mean, for the second straight week in a row in regards to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals offense, we saw below average play. And granted, yes, they dealt with some injuries, unexpected injuries on the offensive line, but they have to find a way to right their wrongs, because they will get an opportunity once again next week to advance clearly against the Buffalo Bills. And if that offensive line play the way they played tonight, it's going to be a difficult task for them to advance. Not to mention, when you look at on the opposite side of the football field, you have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. So yes, they did just enough to win this ball game, but eventually you need to see Joe Burrow elevate the guys that are in front of him to do a better job, to be able to be more efficient and be more consistent, because those are not Joe Burrow-like numbers. Granted, because of how well his defense played, and like I said, putting 7 points on the scoreboard alone defensively, that does wonders for you in regards to winning ball games. But we didn't really see the Joe Burrow that we thought we would see. A lot of that had to do with the inability to protect him, but we don't see them getting healthy moving forward. So Joe Burrow has to find a way to do what he did last year and overcome those hurdles.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mac, because they are substantial injuries, or at least it appeared that way here for Jonah Williams. You stack that on top of Alex Kappa and Lyle Collins. You're now down both of your tackles and a starting guard. Last year, Joe Burrow essentially led this team to the Super Bowl from his back, looking up at the sky. I don't know if that's a realistic expectation this coming season or in the weeks to come here, B-Mac. As you take a look at the sample size that we had behind or beyond Jonah Williams, is that a realistic expectation? We know it's the goal, but can he get it done with a new platoon squad in front of him after they had found some continuity over the last 2 months?
I don't think so, and the reason why I say that, Joe, is because, as you mentioned, over the last few months, this offensive line has been really stout. A year ago, they were below average the entire season. So he just was so used to fighting for his life in the pocket, it became a thing. So it carried on in the playoffs, but yet and still he was able to weather the storm because he was so comfortable being uncomfortable in the pocket. Now, when you look at what they've done over the last 2 months of the season, especially when they were healthy, that offensive line unit became extremely consistent. Now, when you factor in the injuries, now you got new faces in new places trying to do a job that they haven't really been called to do the entire year. And that's why we saw a big-time drop-off tonight when you had the injuries, the unexpected injuries in this ball game. And I can tell you this much, when you look at what we saw last year compared to this year, you're playing against superstar-like quarterbacks in the playoffs. You got Josh Allen, you got Money Pat Mahomes. Remember, their second-round game, the first round was against Derek Carr. Granted, that was a one-possession ball game. Derek Carr, the Raiders. You find a way to win that ball game, Joe Burrow. The second round, Ryan Tannehill, right? And then, of course, we saw what happened in the AFC Championship game. But now, next week, if you only score 17 points against the Buffalo Bills next week, one would think Josh Allen at home can do a little more than 17 himself.
Yeah, B-Mac, I agree with you. It's not sustainable, and Joe Burrow put this team on his back because his offensive line didn't really help him out at all during that playoff run to the Super Bowl last year. But the one thing I will say, this Buffalo Bills defense has not been at the level they were last year. It was the #1 overall defense in football. So now Joe Burrow, he has to understand what he does really well is get the ball out of his hands really quickly, and that's what he's going to have to do against the Buffalo Bills. When they decide to go man coverage, he's going to have to find T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on some back shoulder throws, on some hitch routes. He's got to elevate his team, like you talked about, if they want a realistic chance, because as we talked about, Moose, doesn't look like the offensive line is going to get any healthier going into next week against Buffalo. So it's going to be up to Joe Burrow to know how to get rid of the ball quickly. And then he's the magic man. Nobody has better pocket presence than him. There was times in this game versus the Ravens where he made 3 or 4 guys miss. More specifically, that last time they had the ball, he rolled out to his left, tried to find somebody down the field. Nobody was open. Got 4 or 5 yards, got down, so the clock continued to run. But Joe Burrow is going to have to elevate this team because the offensive line doesn't look like it's going to get any healthier next week versus Buffalo.
Yeah, Burrow last week famously saying he believes the window is open his entire career. The door to that backfield appears like it's going to be open for the weeks to come here as well. I hear you guys wanting to get to this matchup because it's a great one. Bills-Bengals. It's one that was cut short, obviously, with the grave scenes that unfolded. Before we do that, let's put the bow on the Ravens season that was, because it was very up and down, injury-riddled, and now the question mark of Lamar hangs over the entire franchise moving forward. They break off Roquan. Lamar's still waiting for his money. Huntley did a good job presenting himself the best he could in this game. He wasn't sterling. He wasn't 100% clean. Dudes, what is the first step here for the Ravens?
Figuring out what you're going to do with Lamar Jackson. There's been rumors out there that they could make him available via trade. Now, Tyler Huntley showed well, but do you have enough faith in him to run this offense? Because without Lamar Jackson, you're going to need somebody like Tyler Huntley to run this offense. The offense is tailored for Lamar Jackson. Not too many quarterbacks can come in and run this offense. Your whole personnel is based off of Lamar Jackson. When you run 12, 13 personnel, 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, Patrick Ricard at the fullback position. So you have to figure it out. Now, you know, they have the franchise tag in their back pocket. We'll see if they do that. Does Lamar Jackson decide to hold out? We don't know what his injury status is with the PCL as well. So the Ravens have a lot to do this offseason and figuring out what are we going to do with Lamar Jackson? Do we make him available and move forward with Tyler Huntley? Or do we decide to franchise Lamar Jackson, see if we can work out a deal in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? Lamar Jackson, will they be able to agree to terms in extending him with a contract that he's okay with? But Tyler Huntley is not the answer. If you're moving Lamar Jackson, you're only moving him knowing you're getting a guy who has shown the ability to lead a team in the right direction at the quarterback position. Because yes, Tyler Huntley jumped into the saddle and did some pretty good things. Clearly, this team, they don't have a fighting chance without Lamar Jackson when he's not in the lineup. To be able to make a deep postseason run, to be able to have championship aspirations. So hopefully they come to terms. Franchise tagging him, it keeps him in a Baltimore Ravens uniform for next year, but you would think they would like to lock him up long-term because he's shown the organization that he is their franchise quarterback. He is a franchise quarterback. But if they can't get a deal done, either you move Lamar Jackson, you get somebody in return that can give you production, consistent production, or you find a way to keep him there by either franchising him and just telling him, hey, man, we're going to rock and roll for one more year. Hopefully you don't hold out, or give him what he's looking for in regards to an extension.
He was my guy, B-Mac. He knows I'm a Bears fan, and every day I get a different trade package. He gives me the yes or no. I'm looking forward to the one tomorrow, Mac. I'm looking forward to that Monday morning trade package coming my way. Let's move this thing forward because it's the Bengals, it's the Bills, it's going to be big-time football. Every game in the playoffs thus far has gone to the over, so maybe it's points of plenty between these two again, and the schedule has come out. That's going to be 3 p.m. Sunday on CBS, so you get your full week there if you're the Bengals and the Bills. B-Mac, I'll go your way first here. Headlining this matchup is what? What really catches your eye when you're talking Bengals-Bills divisional round, two heavyweight quarterbacks going head-to-head?
I think it's about the quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
Two big-time players at the quarterback position, two outstanding guys who can lead their team to the promised land. We saw sloppy play from Josh Allen, to say the least, against the Miami Dolphins, but he's played against a third-string quarterback. So, of course, there were windows of opportunities for them to prevail, and they were able to do so. Then we transitioned to Joe Burrow tonight, didn't have his best effort, but because of their defense, they helped them seal a big-time win. So that's the storyline for me, man. Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow. We thought we would see this matchup weeks ago, but because of what happened, the game was canceled. Now we get an opportunity to see it in a Game 7-like situation. Win or go home. So which quarterback will find a way to be able to keep his playoff hopes alive and just out-dueling the other quarterback?
Yeah, B-Mac, that's the obvious, storyline, right? The two quarterbacks. But I'm going to look at the Bengals wide receivers versus secondary from the Buffalo Bills, who, again, last year was the #1 pass defense in football. It's almost a shell of itself when you talk about Skylar Thompson having success today against him. Mac Jones, that offense was anemic for the New England Patriots. They had their way with that secondary 2 weeks ago versus the Buffalo Bills. So we know what Jamar Chase and T. Higgins brings, and also Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow, we know the offensive line is going to be, scattered around with so many guys being injured up front. But this Buffalo Bills defensive line has not been able to get after the quarterback since Von Miller's been hurt. So I give the advantage as far as the DBs for Buffalo versus the receivers versus the Cincinnati Bengals to the Cincinnati Bengals because of the rapport that Joe Burrow has with his receivers. That's one matchup I'm really going to be keying in on next Sunday at 3 p.m.
And I think the more we talk about it, it becomes apparent that these two offenses do mirror each other in some ways. High-powered quarterbacks, an awesome one on the outside, twos to complement it, a running game that is there at times and not there at others. It's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch it play out.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.